5 clear signs. God has already forgiven you, no matter what you've done. Something I've noticed after talking with so many people is this: they love God, they believe in Him, but deep down there's still this quiet question. Has God really forgiven me? And maybe at some point in your own walk with Him, that question has lingered in your heart too. But today, instead of looking back at what you've done, I want us to look at what God is doing right now. Because when God forgives someone, He doesn't leave them guessing. He leaves traces, clear, bright, unmistakable signs that His grace is already at work in their life. And here's the encouraging part. God's forgiveness doesn't drag you back to your past. It actually pushes you forward into the person you're becoming. You start thinking differently, feeling lighter, seeing possibilities again. Not because you're trying harder, but because God has touched something deep inside you. So today, we're going straight into 5 clear signs that God has already forgiven you. No matter what you've done, you don't have to fear it. You don't have to overthink it. Just pay attention. And you'll see God is already leading you into the future He prepared for you. Part 1. When your mindset begins to shift from self-condemnation to growth. There is something gentle God does in a person's heart when He has already forgiven them. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's more like a quiet turning inside of you, a soft reorientation of how you see yourself and how you see Him. And many times this shift happens before you even realize it. You wake up one day and notice that the way you think is not the way you used to think. The heaviness is not as heavy. The old labels don't stick the way they used to. And you find yourself wondering, where did that change come from? I've had conversations with people who believed they were still standing outside of God's grace, only to discover that their thoughts were already moving toward healing. And I would gently say to them, people who are not forgiven don't think this way. They don't grow this way. What you're describing is the work of God's mercy in real time. Maybe you've experienced that too. Maybe recently, instead of beating yourself up for the past, you've found yourself asking healthier questions. Not what's wrong with me, but what can I learn from this? Not why did I fail again, but what is God forming in me through this season? That shift, small as it seems, is a sign of forgiveness taking root. God is renewing your mind long before you see the full picture. And here's the beautiful part. Forgiven people begin to see possibilities again. You start recognizing that you're not defined by your worst moments. You sense a quiet permission to move forward, to grow, to try again. That's not you trying to be optimistic. That's the Holy Spirit lifting your eyes. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you noticed a change in the way you talk to yourself? Have you sensed a bit more patience, a bit more clarity, a bit more grace toward your own story? Those shifts don't arrive by accident. They arrive because God has already dealt with the past, and now He is preparing your future. Forgiveness is not just the removal of guilt. It is the restoration of perspective. It is God handing you back your ability to hope. And when your thoughts begin to align more with who He says you are, that is one of the clearest signs that His forgiveness has already covered you. So if you sense that inner movement, that slow but steady rise of a new mindset, take heart. God is not reminding you of who you were. He is shaping who you are becoming, and He is doing it with the tenderness of someone who has already called you His own. Part 2. When your heart becomes more sensitive to what is good. One of the most surprising signs that God has already forgiven you is that your heart begins to respond differently to the things that are good, pure, and life-giving. It's not something you force. It's not something you plan. It simply begins to happen, almost quietly, like a fresh breeze moving through a room you didn't realize had grown stale. And suddenly, moments that once felt ordinary start touching you in unexpected ways. Maybe it's a verse you've read 100 times, but this time it reaches a deeper place. Maybe it's a worship song that stirs something warm inside you. Or maybe it's a simple act of kindness someone shows you, and you find yourself moved in a way that surprises even you. These are not random emotional sparks. They are signs that God has softened your heart again. I often tell people this. When God forgives you, He doesn't just clear your past. He reawakens your capacity for goodness. He fine-tunes your heart so you can sense what aligns with Him. Think of it like this. A heart carrying the weight of shame becomes numb. A heart touched by grace becomes alive again. And perhaps you've noticed this in your own life. Things that once felt distant now feel meaningful. Conversations that used to pass right by you now stay with you. Maybe you find yourself appreciating beauty in a deeper way, or feeling a quiet gratitude rise up during moments you never used to pay attention to. That is the work of forgiveness. God is renewing your heart from the inside out. There's a tenderness that grows in forgiven people. They are not hard on others the way they once were. They are not quick to judge. They listen differently. They see differently. And without even realizing it, they begin carrying a softness that blesses the people around them. Not weakness, softness. A heart that has been healed doesn't need to protect itself the same way it did before. So let me ask you gently. Have you felt that shift? Have you noticed parts of your heart waking up again? Areas that felt shut down, tired, or guarded? If so, that is not coincidence. That is God restoring who you were meant to be. Forgiveness doesn't just clean the slate. It awakens the soul. It allows you to feel again, care again, and hope again. And when you start responding to goodness with deeper warmth and greater clarity, you can be confident of this. God has already been at work in your heart, guiding you toward the life He always intended for you. Part 3. When unexpected doors begin to open in your life. There is a quiet pattern I've seen over and over again in people who have been forgiven by God. Opportunities begin to appear in places they never expected. Not dramatic miracles, not life-changing events all at once, but small, meaningful openings that carry a sense of timing no human could have arranged. It's as if God gently shifts the path beneath your feet and says, "Walk with me. I'm leading you somewhere new." You may have noticed this in your own life. A conversation that happens at just the right moment. A reconciliation you didn't pursue, yet somehow it unfolds naturally. A job opportunity. A new direction. A second chance. Something that almost feels like grace tapping you on the shoulder. These are not coincidences. When God forgives, He also restores movement. He breathes possibility back into your story. I've spoken with people who thought they had ruined their future. They believed their mistakes had closed every meaningful door. But then, little by little, new doors began to open. Doors they never prayed for, because they didn't think they deserved them. And I would tell them, this is what God does. He doesn't just forgive the past, He makes room for your future. Maybe you felt this in subtle ways. Someone invites you back into a space you thought you had lost. A project you thought was over suddenly comes alive again. Or maybe there's a fresh idea stirring in you. Something hopeful, something new, that you can't quite explain. These are often signs of God's forgiveness at work, because forgiveness always leads to renewal. Think about it. When shame controls your life, everything feels closed. But when God removes that shame, life begins to breathe again. You notice opportunities instead of dead ends. You sense movement instead of stagnation. Not because you're pushing harder, but because God is guiding you forward. And here's something beautiful I want you to hold on to. God often opens small doors before big ones. He gives gentle nudges before major steps. These quiet openings are his way of saying, "You're not disqualified. I'm still writing your story." So if you've started seeing these little shifts, new connections, unexpected encouragement, a soft pull toward something better, pay attention. These are not random blessings. They are fingerprints of the one who has already forgiven you and is now preparing the next chapter of your life. Forgiveness doesn't just set you free from what was. It sets you up for what will be. And when new doors begin to open, often in the most ordinary ways, you can trust that God is already leading you into a future shaped by His grace. Part 4. When you begin to relate to people with a new kind of freedom, one of the clearest signs that God has already forgiven you is not found in your emotions or even in your prayers. It shows up in the way you interact with people. Something softens. Something loosens. The pressure you used to carry, the need to prove yourself, defend yourself, or hide parts of your story, starts to fall away, and you begin to show up in relationships with a quieter confidence, a gentler spirit, and a freedom you may not have realized was missing. I've seen this many times. Someone spends years feeling weighed down by guilt, always on edge, always wondering if people can see the cracks in their life. But when God's forgiveness settles into their heart, they begin to breathe differently around others. They laugh easier. They listen with more patience. They stop assuming people are judging them, and they start offering grace in ways they never could before. Maybe you've sensed some of that in your own life. Perhaps you've noticed that conversations don't drain you the way they used to, or you're not as easily threatened by criticism. Or maybe you've caught yourself responding with kindness in moments when the old you would have reacted sharply. These are not just signs of maturity. They are signs of healing. You see, when shame sits on your shoulders, it distorts the way you relate to everyone around you. You become guarded, defensive, self-protective. But when God forgives you, He removes that weight. And once the weight is gone, you no longer feel the need to hide. Your presence becomes more open, more grounded, more honest. I remember talking with someone who told me, "I didn't realize how much guilt shaped the way I talked to people until it wasn't there anymore." And that resonated with me, because forgiven people carry a different atmosphere. They bring peace into rooms instead of anxiety. They listen without needing to control. They care without needing anything in return. Why? Because they are no longer living from a place of lack. They're living from grace. Maybe take a moment and reflect on your recent interactions. Have they felt lighter? Have you found yourself more patient with people's flaws, more compassionate toward their struggles, more secure in who you are? Those are signs that God's forgiveness has already flowed into your relationships. Forgiveness doesn't just change how you stand before God. It changes how you stand before people. It releases you from the fear of being exposed and replaces it with the confidence of being loved. And when your relationships begin to feel healthier, warmer, and more genuine, that is often God's subtle way of saying, "You are free. Walk in this new freedom I've given you." Part 5. When a sense of purpose begins to rise inside you, there is a beautiful shift that happens in a person who has been forgiven by God, and it often catches them by surprise. Somewhere along the way, without forcing anything, a quiet sense of purpose begins to grow inside them. It may start as a small thought, a gentle pull, a desire to do something meaningful, something bigger than the mistakes they once carried. And they begin to realize that forgiveness is not just about being released from the past. It is also about being invited into a future. I've talked with people who felt unqualified for anything good. They believed their role in God's story had ended. But after forgiveness settled into their heart, they started sensing new ideas, new dreams, new stirrings. Nothing flashy, nothing overwhelming, just a growing awareness that God was drawing them into something more. And I would tell them, that desire you feel, That's not ambition. That's calling. Maybe you've sensed that too. Maybe recently you've felt nudged to encourage someone, to serve in a way you never considered before, or to rebuild a part of your life that you had completely written off. Maybe you've noticed a spark of compassion, or a renewed desire to make a difference in a relationship, a workplace, or even your community. These are not random impulses. They are signs of forgiveness at work. Because forgiven people don't stay stuck in survival mode. They begin to step into purpose. Their heart becomes open to possibilities again, open to growth, open to the idea that God can work through them, not just in spite of their story, but sometimes because of it. God has always done this. He forgives, and then he sends. He heals, and then he calls. He restores, and then he equips. And purpose doesn't always announce itself with big declarations. Sometimes it looks like a slow, steady rise of hope. Sometimes it's a willingness to try again. Sometimes it's simply the courage to believe that your life still matters deeply to God. Take a moment and think about what has been stirring in you lately. Has a new desire awakened? Has a dormant dream started breathing again? Have you found yourself thinking, maybe God can still use me? If so, that is not your imagination. That is your calling beginning to unfold. Forgiveness clears the soil, so purpose can take root. And here's the truth I want you to hold close. God never forgives someone just to leave them where they were. He forgives so he can lead, shape, and partner with them in ways they never saw coming. When purpose begins to rise in you, quietly, steadily, hopefully, it is one of the strongest signs that God has already healed what was behind you and is guiding you toward what lies ahead. Forgiveness opens the door. Purpose invites you to walk through it. And when you sense that calling awakening inside you, you can trust that God has already gone before you, preparing the very path your forgiven heart is now ready to follow. Conclusion. As we come to the end of this message, I want to leave you with something simple, but deeply true. When God forgives you, he does not hand you a fragile second chance. He gives you a new beginning that is strong enough to carry your future. His forgiveness is not a temporary feeling. It is a foundation you can stand on, breathe on, and build on. And maybe as you listened today, you recognized one or two of these signs in your own life. Maybe you noticed the shift in your thinking, or the softening in your heart. Maybe you saw those unexpected opportunities, or felt a new kind of freedom in your relationships. Or maybe a quiet sense of purpose has been rising inside you, almost without your permission. If any of that has been happening, then hear this gently. God has already been working in you. He has already been healing you. He has already forgiven you. I want you to walk away with this confidence. You are not defined by what you did. You are defined by the grace that now holds you. God does not keep you at a distance, waiting for you to fix yourself. He draws you close so he can lead you forward. And his forgiveness is not the end of your story. It is the doorway into everything he still plans to do in you and through you. So as you step into the rest of your day, let this truth settle into your heart. You are forgiven, you are loved, and you are being shaped for a future full of hope. Let that reality steady your steps. Let it strengthen your decisions. Let it remind you that you never walk alone. God is with you. God is for you. And the work he has begun in you is only the beginning of a much greater